All right. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. This is Miranda Kennedy, and I'm happy to be welcoming all of you to our third DEI Community of Practice on Ticket and Workforce EN. I am joined today by my colleague, Kevin Nickerson, who is our subject matter expert on Ticket and Workforce Employment Networks. We are both with the NDI Technical Assistance Team of the National Disability Institute. And I'm going to actually hand it over to Kevin to give us an overview, just a quick reminder about our community of practice, and to give an introduction to our two presenters who we are very happy to have with us today, and then be engaging in our discussion. So thank you again for joining us, everyone, and I'm going to hand the ball over to you, Kevin, to get us started.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Miranda, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have a nice audience today, so that's fantastic. Well, what I wanted to do is just reframe why we're here. And why we are here is to really offer support to you, our DEI project staff that are operating workforce ENs, through this exchange of ideas, through this community of practice, which is sort of new. As Miranda said, this is our third, and we will provide access to seasoned DRCs and other DEI project staff across the country that have achieved success as workforce ENs. Our ambassadors will be sharing insights and their best practices through various topics for each of these COPs. Our process currently is to have our ambassadors speak about a topic and kind of get us kicked off on these COP webinars, and after which we will hopefully hear from each of you in our audience. What they'll talk about is generally practices that they've engaged in that have led to meaningful and sustainable employment outcomes for our ticket holders that are accessing workforce ENs. We will use the experience of this group, and our goal is to support and increase a dialogue and an exchange of ideas around issues that each of us face as workforce ENs with the goal of improving our services. At this point, we do have 10 ticket ambassadors that are across the country that are available to support you, their peers. Ambassadors include a variety of folks, including disability resource coordinators and other related project staff, DEI project staff at the state and local levels. And we do have some included that are at the state level, that are EN administrators. Ambassadors have been operating workforce ENs across the country successfully and have proven experience in operating workforce ENs and assisting beneficiaries. Each of them has varying experiences and expertise, and we have a listing of each of these folks. I'm going to show you how to get there very soon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link actually in the chat here shortly that will take you to the GPS site, workforce GPS site, and show you where to find your ticket ambassadors. They will be participating each month on these calls and providing us an overview of the various topics. What's important is they want to also address questions that you have. In order to make that happen, we really need an interactive discussion at the end of our presentation today. So we really want to know what your experience is, what your challenges are, hopefully some successes that you also have had. So we really need this to be participatory. Again, I'm going to put a link in the chat so that you can find more information about each of our ambassadors in just a moment after the presentation starts. With that, let me introduce our guests for today. Let me get a picture of these ladies here. Here we go. First, we have Swearingin, who is the Alaska Statewide Lead Disability Resource Coordinator for the Disability Employment Initiatives for Round 4 and 6. She leads a team of 6 DRCs statewide whose focus is on integrated resource teams, building partnerships and expanding youth-centered focus, and developing successful career pathways through integration. Next with us, we have Vanessa Gable, who is a counselor with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Vanessa has been with Alaska DVR for the last 11 years as a counselor. Vanessa started off as an office clerk with the state of Alaska and has since moved to field office work and up from an assistant position to now being a VR counselor. So we're excited to have both of these speakers with us today. I'm going to kind of switch back to your beginning slide here, Wendy, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Kevin and Miranda. Like I said, I have Vanessa in here with me, and I promised her she wouldn't have to talk a lot during the presentation, but she's more than willing to answer questions towards the end. One of the things that we found when we were looking at the integrated resource model and working with voc rehab is we were having a hard time getting through to how it works in conjunction with voc rehab. So these are some of the issues that we came across. And the first one was defining the difference between Partnership Plus and the IRT model with the DBR counselors. That was a big one. We do have an MOU that's in place that states that we have a partner, that we're going to partner and engage with the beneficiaries. But the problem was that the DBR counselors didn't necessarily refer the beneficiaries to us. And with them having a lot on their plates, I mean, it's just one more thing that they had to do. And so getting that over that hump was a big thing for us. We also found that it wasn't as effective as it could be, and one of the main issues was we were engaging DBR at the very end of the Partnership Plus as they were closing, and so that wasn't always successful. We also, one of the other issues that we came across was how to engage the ticket holders sooner versus later in the process. And so that was one of the issues that we found when we were dealing with this IRT model and how do we break through that DBR partnership. The third thing that we were faced with was working with the job center model and how to build upon the IRT. And how Alaska does it is we have a tiered system that we put in place and working with our flow. And what we have done is all of our individuals that work in the front line of the job center are trained as DRCs at a basic level. And so they're able to work with individuals with disabilities that come into the job centers. And then we have DRC2s that have a deeper knowledge of individuals that are on Social Security and ticket holders, and they work at a deeper level. So that knowledge that we've given our frontline staff have given us that ability to work with these ticket holders on a much broader range and then a much deeper range as well. So that we've done statewide in all of our job centers, whether they're in EN or not. We also have training sessions at a statewide level in monthly meetings to talk about issues that have come up and how do we focus and how do we work with individuals. And then the last thing is creating those successful career pathways. And this is pretty new to us, but we're coming up with some innovative ways to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about one of the ways that we're doing it here in Alaska, and hopefully you guys can find that a little bit inspiring for your state. So Miranda, we have a polling question, so I'll turn it over to you for the polling question.
Great. Thank you very much, Wendy. All right, so our polling question, because we want to determine where our group is at that is joining us on our COP today, the polling question, which I'm opening right now, is do you have a Partnership Plus agreement with vocational rehabilitation? And your options are yes, no, I don't know, and I'm going to go find out. So if you would just take a moment and let us know where you're at, because we'd like to be able to tailor these discussions and take that into consideration as we're presenting information and as we move into our discussion after Wendy's kickoff presentation. That would be great. So I'm going to be quiet for just 30 seconds, let folks finish that, and then I'll let you know what our results are and hand it back to Wendy. You should see the polling questions on, I think, probably the right-hand side of the screen if you're questioning that at all. Okay. And thank you. It looks like we've got a lot of people either in progress or who have finished this. And 28%, a little over a quarter, Wendy and Kevin, of our folks, 30% now, are saying yes, they have a Partnership Plus agreement. We've got 14% saying no, about 10% saying they don't know, and about 7% saying they're going to go find out. So we'll go ahead and close up that poll right now. That'll take about 15 seconds to close up because, you know, technology. But it's great that we can do these polls. We have one more poll later on in Wendy's presentation, so stay tuned, and thanks for completing that. Yeah, we've got our yeses are 30%, our no's are 16%, our I don't knows are 10%, and our I'm going to go find outs are about 7%. So, Wendy, I'll go ahead and hand it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Miranda. So it's really important that you do find out if you do have an MOU. Those MOUs are really great. The problem is what we have found is that not necessarily do they always get followed. So it's really about engaging with your DBR counselors, and that's one of the things we started with. That's the strategy, is engaging. And one of the ways that we engaged is our DRCs went to regional meetings and met with the team to explain how DEI could help them meet their goals and follow up with their clients. And we didn't do this just once. We did it several times before it finally kind of sank through to some of them, and not all of them have really meshed. And so if you can get one counselor on your side, that's great. If you can get 3, that's even better. The more counselors that you can get to understand, the better off you're going to be. But it takes time, and it takes building the relationships, and it takes them understanding. We found that. The WIOA changes that mandated the VR counselors partnerships have helped, and also the focus on their outcome measures. That, if you can make that linkage between they have outcome measures and they have to follow up again at 6 months and 12 months now, Vanessa?
Yes.
So their follow-up, if you are taking their ticket holder and you're assigning their ticket, they now have a place to follow up with. So that's a real linkage there between you taking their ticket holder and helping them with their successful closure as well. The other thing is, when we were starting to build our IRTs and bringing in partners, we thought that smaller was better. And so we really met with the IRT team as 1 or 2 partners and really focused on the client's needs and had the client dictate if there was other partners that can come on board. I know Vanessa and I have had it to where it was only me and her and the client, and then other times it's been me, the client, the DBR counselor, the job coach, the business service partner here in our office. So it can get bigger depending on what the client needs, but it could be very small. And the client that I'm going to give you the example about, he felt most comfortable when it was just the 2 of us. And he didn't want it to go very much further because he wanted to build his own independence. So it really is, to me, it was client-focused. The third thing, the strategy that we are focusing on, is helping clients with job center services. And that goes back to our tiered service, or our tiered DRCs here in Alaska, and how we work at everybody here is a DRC, so therefore they're able to work with that individual. So it made the DBR counselors feel better knowing that our DRCs are not just what we have as counselors or our experts in the field. All of our job center staff are DRCs, so they're all able to assist if that client just needs help with resumes or just needs help with job searching. It doesn't have to go to one particular person. It could be any frontline staff. And then we have being the support after closure, and this is what we found was extremely helpful when we got involved sooner rather than later. At the very beginning with that Partnership Plus, it was more about, hey, when you're getting to closure, we can take over that client and help that client. And now we found the sooner that we get involved with them, we can help meet their goals and help them stay more successful later because they are more comfortable with us and we have a stronger foundation. And then determining the career pathways as and if they need it. And so it doesn't have to be right at that time with DBR. It could be later on. It could be after DBR closure. And we found that that is really something that we've come to focus on and continue along those paths. So one of the people that Vanessa and I have worked with is Brian. When we both got Brian at the same time, he was with DBR for quite a few years and got transferred onto Vanessa's caseload. And I came on at the same time, so we formed this IRT together. And Brian was on SSDI, but he wanted to return to work, and he was very passionate about returning to work. This is something that he wanted to pursue. He really didn't know what he wanted to do, but he knew he wanted to help individuals with addiction. He had his own background barriers, and he wanted to work in the health and social service field, and here in Alaska, working with individuals in that kind of capacity is rather hard when you have background issues, but it's something that he really was passionate about, and so we required that he be realistic with it, and that we had goals that we set for him and he needed to accomplish. So it wasn't about, hey, we have a job and we're going to go find one. We had to come up with some strategies for Brian. But once we did, Brian, when Vanessa and I talked about it with him, we came up with a vocational goal, and he wanted to work as a peer mentor. We came up with that as a goal for him. And we also worked with Brian on self-advocacy. Brian was one that he didn't want a lot of people on his case. He was very comfortable with who he was comfortable with, but he did want to advocate for himself, so we worked very hard with him on self-advocacy. And we did work with him on advocating for himself with an employer about getting a waiver written with the state for him to work with a vulnerable population, which he did. It took a couple months to get there, like 3 months, right?
It did, and because he was also getting he had to contact another town to get it too.
We had to get his background check from another town. It was quite a process, but we worked with him quite a lot on what his goal was going to be. And then he ended up being employed, working as a peer mentor. He closed successfully with VR and transferred his ticket to our EN. And now he just had his 6-month evaluation, and so he's had a couple ups and downs at his job. But he also just wrote a letter and had some accommodations put in place for him. So he's doing very well with the self-advocacy. And also, one of the things that he's very passionate about is photography. He loves it quite a lot. And we live in Alaska, which everything you point a camera at, you can pretty much get a great picture of. So that doesn't hurt anything. So he talked to his employer about teaching a class once a week to the population that he is working with, and he does do that. So not only is he combining what he thought he could give forward to, what he's learned in his life, but also his passion, and he's quite happy doing that. So because I got involved early on with Brian, and we've carried that IRT, he successfully closed. And now he's been with us for probably about 3 or 4 months as an EN, but we've been with Brian for close to a year now, helping out with DBR and being that IRT model.
And he was the first joint case that we worked, and because when Wendy was first coming up to staff meetings, it was kind of like, well, how does this work? What can you guys really do? And having that case in kind of like an acting, a live model, I was like, oh, okay, I see how it can work. And so it kind of just facilitated additional referrals down there.
And now we have several working cases together. So he was really our caveat to getting DBR on board and working together on this model. Miranda, I think we have another polling question.
We do. Could you turn the slide for me and I will pull up the poll? Thank you, Wendy. All right, so now this is our second and last polling question. The question is, and I'm opening it right now on the right-hand side, at what point is your DEI project engaging vocational rehabilitation customers? Your options are at closure, during or after closure, during VR job development phase, all of the above, or not at all. So if you could take a moment we'll give you 1 minute to log in your answers, and that will give us helpful information about where you are at as we move forward with our presentation and discussion. All right, we have about half of the folks have finished. We'd love to hear from the other half. It's looking like our breakdown currently is 0% at closure, 7% during or after closure, 13% during VR job development phase, 27% all of the above, 29, that just went up, all right. And 4% are saying that they are not engaging VR customers at all. All right, so again, Wendy and Kevin, that's helpful information for us as we move into our discussion. 0% at closure, during or after closure, 7%, during VR job development, 13%, all of the above, 28%. So that's a robust strategy, and 4% for not. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close that poll up.
Oh, thank you, Miranda.
And Wendy?
I have that now? Okay, perfect. So that's really helpful information. That during job development phase is really going to help you develop that relationship with that client and then have a more successful relationship moving forward after closure or during that closure process. One of the things that we've found as we break it down and how it really works is engaging with VR, engage with partners and go, again, at that staff meeting, if you can get into that staff meeting and introduce DEI, that was a big thing for us. Like Vanessa said, we engaged over and over and over again, and it took one client to really get together and see how that really worked, but it took a face and a name before that. So that was one strategy that we used. But you really got to introduce what we do, how we can do it, how we can help clients, and sometimes it takes more time, and it takes follow-up. So that was a big piece of how we broke down that wall between Vanessa and I and seeing how it really, really worked. Then working with clients and partners to come up with an employment goal. Sometimes, you know, the VR counselors come up with an employment goal when they first start, and sometimes that's years and years, sometimes 2 years, and sometimes they're not changed. So the employment goals can always change, and sometimes working with them during that job search phase to come up with a new employment goal is always helpful. Discuss ticket to work clients. What we've found is, you know, they automatically get assigned to DVR when they assign their ticket, so to speak, and they don't always understand the ticket process. So it's always important to explain what ticket is, how it is used, and how it can benefit the client, because they don't understand the ticket process when they're with DVR. And benefits planning and with a CWIC is what we found is important too. 2 of our individuals are CWICs on our team, and we're planning on getting the rest of our counselors, our DRCs, trained as CWICs. That's in the future. But right now we have 2, and we found that because a lot of our DVR offices are in the same job center or within walking distance as our job center, having that one-on-one contact with the client by doing a benefits analysis can also lead you to that, building that relationship and that foundation. I know it has helped me with a lot of the clients that Vanessa and I have worked together with, because I get to know them on a different level than I would just being referred to them. Let's see, staying engaged through closure and assigning the ticket after closure. Like I said, that one's really important, is that engagement piece, and getting to know the client, getting to know what their needs are and how you can help them. Even if it's not always a joint meeting with DVR, sometimes there's an additional meeting with just you, but how can you help them with the job search development part of that, and getting to know what they need from you, and it doesn't always have to be in conjunction with DVR. And then helping the clients determine their career pathways, and sometimes looking at that bigger picture. And one of the ways that ALASA is doing that, because round 6, we are a youth-centered round, one of the things that we've done, and this is a newer IRT moment that we've determined that we can do, is working with our youth. We've created intern positions in our 5 job centers around the state. The positions are 4 to 6 weeks, 6-week-long positions. And what we've done is we've reached out to our partners, VR included, to help us fill these positions. Some of them are the university system, some independent living, Job Corps. To name a few, those are some of the partners that we've partnered with in order to help us with these positions. And we work with our partners in an IRT model to determine employment goals and then stay connected through those internships. So these youth are being assigned to a job center to be helping with duties such as filing, data entry, customer service, helping with projects, and then they are also given time to work on resumes, job searches, taking employment assessments or whatever is coming up to help them not only gain skills, but then what is the next steps of their employment. Individuals with disabilities are also teaching our job center staff about their disabilities and what in the environment should be changed to be accessible. So it's also about that universal accessibility. And then because we've only started this November 1st, I don't have a lot of data on it, but we've had 4 individuals complete or finishing up this internship. One so far has gotten a full-time job and has gone directly into a full-time job. And we've had 1 ticket assigned. So 50% of them are working towards something else, and then 2 of them were working. One of them is in-school credit, so he's gaining credit for high school, and then the other one is thinking about going into Job Corps. So that's kind of an IRT, or career pathway that we're working on here in Alaska, and we're working with our partners on that as well. We have our first one here in Juneau was in conjunction with Vanessa, and we placed him, and he's doing wonderfully. He's got some high school credit out of it.
And he was one who didn't really talk about himself a whole heck of a lot, and he's low vision and I guess is, you know, tries to use what vision he has to the best of his ability and isn't really is reluctant to kind of venture on to, like, you know, cane and that kind of thing. And I feel like this has kind of gotten him to think about, you know, eventually I'm going to be blind, and, you know, these are the things that I might need, and just kind of open up a little bit more. So that's been pretty neat.
And it's really kind of cool, him being here in our job center, is he's taught our staff a lot. He's taught our staff about we have some job center boards where we post some upcoming events and stuff like that, and he came in and said, you know, this is too high, I can't read this, it needs to be lowered, or this screen is great, but it needs to be over here. So he's really taught our job center staff some great things that we need to do for our accessibility, and that's happened around the state too. We've had a child or a youth that's on the spectrum, and he taught our staff about individuals who's on the spectrum and how they can help those individuals. And so it's been a great learning experience. And like I said, it's only been a month and a half. So we have, we're expecting great things from this career pathways that we're also partnering on. So some of the outcomes, besides that one, some of the outcomes that we've had with ticket holders throughout this project is we've had higher retention rates with ticket holders. I looked at our numbers as we were going through here, and to track DVR Partnership Plus since 2013, overall, if we look at all of our ticket holders and the ones that we've had to unassign for various reasons, our retention rate is 2.7%. The ones that we've assigned through Partnership Plus, overall it's 7%, but of those 6% are still assigned after 4 years. So that's a pretty good retention rate. And I think it's because of the fact that we're getting involved early and we're staying involved, and they have that transition period. IRT clients go to work sooner. In my experience, I don't have data on that. They stay to work longer and have more support, and I think it's just because they've had that support and they have those career pathways. And then, of course, our ticket assignments and employment has increased with our internships. And, of course, we've only had 4, but as we can see, those ones are increasing vastly from what we were doing prior to that. So I have some discussion items, and these are some things that we would like to know what others are doing in their Partnership Pluses with VR, because we could always use some improvement and find out what other people are doing. So how are you doing the IRT approach with VR, and how is it working? And what is your process for IRT and Partnership Plus? So these are questions that I have for how are other states doing it?
And with that, we would like to open up for our community of practice discussion. So thank you, Wendy. And for this, we have on the right-hand side, you can raise your hand, and we'll unmute your line if you'd like to pipe up and weigh in on these questions from Wendy or any other questions or comments you might have. You can also submit in the chat or in the Q&A to the hosts and presenters, and we can take your questions that way as well. We know we have a lot of smart people on the phone, and there are a lot of you. We're so glad to see the numbers today. So we're hoping if you have anything to contribute to this discussion, now is the time. Take the bull by the reins and raise your hand. All right, I see our first taker, Kasha Damari, one of our other COP presenters, our first one out of the gate, actually. So Kasha is the project lead in California. And Kasha, what was your comment or question or contribution for Wendy?
Yes. Hi, Miranda. How is everyone? This was a great presentation. Thanks, Wendy and Vanessa. So my question actually is involving the tracking piece. And I was first wondering, is there paperwork or a formal referral form or something within your Partnership Plus agreement?
Hi, Kasha. We don't have a formal tracking as far as the referral process between us. Honestly, Vanessa sends me an email, so that's kind of our referral piece. We've tried formal referrals in the past where we've written up, this is our referral process, and they didn't work. It just kind of got lost in the, to me, I think, and Vanessa could disagree with me, but VR has so much paperwork, it was one more paperwork for them to do, and so it just got shoved in aside. So it just seemed much easier for her to send an email that says, hey, I have a client, is it appropriate to put you on my calendar, or can we talk about this client and see if it would be appropriate? So that seems to work better for us than a formal one that just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Referral forms are something that I'm like, oh, I have to write a narrative. I think that's what it boils down to, is usually you have to provide a history, and it's just like, here's another piece of paper.
Right, exactly. And when I was actually working in the field, we had a similar system where we kind of did away with the referral form because it was easier just to make contact. So my follow-up question then is, with the numbers, which are wonderful that you shared, Wendy, how did you, sort of track that? Was it anecdotal, or was there a data capture somewhere? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think Susan is on the phone with us, and Susan is our administrator that keeps track of everything. But anytime a ticket is assigned to us, our DRCs have to send a questionnaire. It's kind of very small to Susan, who keeps track of our information. And one of the questions on there is this a Partnership Plus? And so we keep track of that information. And starting in January, we're going to ask, is it an IRT? So that's another question that we've added that we're going to keep track of from here on out. So it's simply numbers that we track all of these different things, including like how fast they go to work, how much money they're making. So we keep track of all that data, or Susan does, so that I can pull it when I need it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was great discussion. We actually have, and thank you, Kasha, we have a few other folks who've raised their hands, 2 of our DEI ticket ambassadors, as well as a DRC in the field who's coming up with some great solutions as well. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute, I believe this is Leslie's line from Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services. She's another one of our DEI ticket ambassadors. So Leslie, I've unmuted your line, and welcome to the COP.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We've had great success with co-enrollments with VR when they're still active, but we have not had real good success. So currently with our operating DEI, we are round 5, and now we just were awarded round 7 as well for the youth. So we've had a lot of current enrollments. We have not had success with them once they've exited VR, getting the referral to Partnership Plus or through that process. Any suggestions?
Since you're having, are you talking about co-enrollment when they're still with VR and you're working together with them?
Yes, we've had great success with that. So through our current DEI project, I don't know that we've had any that have really fully closed from VR yet. We're still jointly working with them, but as far as, embracing Partnership Plus, any that they've worked with on their own and referring them to us to continue providing retention services or follow-up, or even engaging us before they're closing them, we have not had success with that.
So
and we've had several meetings, but they just aren't embracing it.
No, it's ticket, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So my suggestion, and you may be already doing this, but my suggestion would be to explain to them in front of the counselor what ticket is, and they're already assigned to DVR. So at the very beginning, as some of our DVR counselors, I think their biggest, so once they close with DVR, DVR gets their money back if they go to work successfully and they get their measures back. And so I think that at the very beginning, DVR thought we were in competition with them. Some of the DVR counselors did. And so it was a competition thing for them. So it's really about explaining to them that it's not a competition. We're here to support their clients all the way through. And for us, I think that the common measures really help because they have to follow, and that's a WIOA, it's new with the WIOA thing, or with the WIOA law thing, I should call it a law. The common measures say that they have to be followed up at that 6 months after closure and 12 months after closure now. So by having them say, by us saying, yeah, we can support them, and you won't have to go find them, you won't have to contact them, come to us, we can tell you what they're doing, we can tell you where they're working, and if something happens at their job, we can help with getting them back to work, and we can be that support. That's been a big breakthrough with us as well, is having them with that common measures. Do you have anything else to add?
I could see how it would be beneficial because, you know, clients aren't always the best in keeping, you know, I guess foreseeing when they might be having issues with an employer or something like that, whereas if they're touching base with you, like with Brian and getting the accommodation, it can be kind of, you know, circumvented, and then you can figure out if you need to go back to VR or not.
Right. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
The other thing that, like with another kid that I initially contacted you about him, he was low cognitive functioning and didn't really have family support to help him with reporting to Social Security. But I bounced it off of Wendy to see if he might be a good person for that follow along to make sure that his reporting gets done because he is working and is making a significant wage. But ultimately the disability or the what is it? It's REACH, which is a developmental disability agency.
Yeah.
It's an EN, and they picked him up and are supporting him with the follow-along services.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. This is some great, robust discussion. I can't wait to hear what Sarah has to add to the mix. So, Sarah, from our Massachusetts Round 5 project, your line is unmuted, and welcome to the COP.
Hi, can you guys hear me? I have a little bit of a cold.
You're a little bit low, but I don't want to ask you to talk louder if you have a cold.
So I'm so glad that I think it was Central Minnesota that asked that previous question because I had the same question. So I was so glad to hear that answer because I've wondered the same thing. But I actually wrote in the chat, and we've had a lot of luck using the IRT model and working with VR to solve transportation issues. I don't know what it's like in other states, but we have considerable transportation barriers that make it hard for people to complete training and then go to work. So some of the things that VR has done is they've helped people take driver's ed. They've helped pay vast fines and fees that have prevented people from getting their driver's license back. They've helped pay for cab rides when people have started working. So just different things, and because we're paying for training often through DEI, I'm a disability resource coordinator in Central Mass. This has really been able to be like a really beneficial relationship. We both get positive outcomes. So that's something that, with working together, we've really been able to solve, I feel like, a lot of significant barriers that I think previously the case might have not gone anywhere.
That's a really good idea. Thank you, Sarah. I didn't think of that.
Great. This is what this is about. Okay. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, no
All right. I'm going to go ahead. Next up, we've got Randy Cook from Vroom Tioga in New York. So Randy is one of our DEI ticket ambassadors as well. So Randy, welcome to the COP.
Thank you, Miranda. 15 degrees in upstate New York.
Oh, wow, that's a little cold in Colorado. How is it in Alaska, though? But we're not here for the weather. What's your question?
Okay, well, I wanted to make a comment. You know, certainly the theme of building relationships and building trust with Access VR or your VR partners is very important. And I think identifying those services that the VR might not be providing. I can think of the services here at our America's Job Center that are different. We do conduct workshops here on job search issues. Obviously, I'm the benefits advisor. That's not happening over at the VR office. And, you know, the traffic flow, building the relationships with those counselors, very key, and then getting invited to those meetings. So those referrals happen on a regular basis. I think are really key, you know, before you can put pen to paper and you know, and actually have an agreement that will work.
No, I totally agree with that. The agreement that we had with VR is great, and it's in place, But the DRCs, that's exactly right, Randy. You hit the nail on the head. Let's try it that way. When you said it's all about the partnership and it's about that relationship building, and if you don't have that, you're not going to get the referrals from VR, you're not going to get the IRTs, and you're not going to get the partnership pluses. Exactly.
All right, great. We have a number of other, thank you, Randy, and we have a number of other questions and hands raised here. I'm going to ask, we did have a quick question about what training is required for a level 1 DRC, and I would think especially around Partnership Plus, maybe if you could add that component for it, that would be helpful, because the level 1 versus level 2 in Alaska is kind of a unique strategy.
Oh, man, I just updated the training too, so I would have to look into all that. But the level 1, they have to learn what an EN is, what ticket actually is. They need to know what people first language is, how to work with individuals with disabilities in the job centers. They do get an overview of different components of DEI, such as what is an integrated resource team, what is, I'm not sure Partnership Plus is on there, but they do get an overview of IRT. And there's a couple of other things on there as well. They have 6 different levels that they have to go through. That we've strategically planned, and they have to go through these in order to be, when they first get hired on to work in the job center. And then the DRC2s are much, much deeper, so they have to learn the policies and procedures that go into the grant, as well as the different components of both grants. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I know we could probably do an entire presentation on your training that you've been providing in Alaska to all the Job Staff Center to make sure that you know, they really are.
Yeah.
Yes, so that if the DRC2 isn't in the center, people are still getting served at a pretty high level.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I'm going to go ahead. I see that Susan Brenner has raised her hand. So Susan, hi. I think you're with Alaska, but which project are you with?
She's my rock. She's the one that holds all the keys to round 4.
That's right. Okay, I knew I was taking a stab in the dark there, but I thought that looked right. There are a lot of UDRCs and DEI project leads. So Susan, hi, welcome from also Alaska. We're glad you could join. You're not sitting there with Wendy and Vanessa, but what is your question or comment? Because you certainly have had experience with this from Alaska as well. I think I unmuted her line. Susan, you might have your own line on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes. Hi. Welcome to the COP.
I just wanted to let Wendy know that I was here listening in if she needed me. But we did devise a way of training staff all across Alaska on DEI and a little bit into Ticket to Work, because we wanted to make sure no matter where a customer came in, we would be able to provide them services.
Sorry, I think I was on mute just then. Okay, great. And Wendy, so Susan also from round 4. So yeah, there's really that capacity building that's taking place, and that's something we're definitely looking to. And you can see how also with that level of training, not just with Partnership Plus, but with all the other components of DEI, that really these pieces, it's like picking up fish hooks, right? They're all kind of interconnected.
Yeah. And Susan's the training specialist for Alaska, but she's been tasked with helping me train all the DRCs in Alaska, so she really has a bigger hand in that than she's putting on. And also she keeps track of all the data for the ticket. So when I say I know what data there is, it's because of Susan. So she really is the data expert. So she's my rock. She holds my keys.
Well, and also we have Wendy's contact information. You're also going to see that from the link, I think, that Kevin shared on how to reach out to all the DEI community of practice for our Workforce EN, our ambassadors. So if you want information about what they're doing with this piece with Partnership Plus, but also that DRC Level 1 training, Wendy and Susan, can folks reach out to you? Because I know you've got a lot of great materials.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, putting in a plug there. Okay. We know we have shared those with other projects too in RTA, so thank you for shining a light on that great model as well. There's so many great models, and if we didn't have 10 extra minutes, I wouldn't have taken that side road. But it looks like, Kevin, do you have anything you'd like to add? It looks like that's it for our current raised hands, and thank you, Susan, for chiming in and also for the great work that you've done to help with the project as well. Very important. But Kevin, I'll hand it over to you while I look in the chat and the Q&A for any comments or questions you might have about.
I thought I'd like to start with some observations. First of all, Wendy and Vanessa, this is fantastic. I just want to bottle up what you're up to and then just send that to other places that haven't gotten to this level of collaboration. I wish we could do that. I was really impressed with the development of the career goals collectively with this shared customer. I thought that was really, really interesting and fantastic. And then I got thinking, if I was Brian, what would this look like from the customer's point of view? He must just think how coordinated all of our services are and been so impressed with all these people stepping up to help him. I couldn't help but think what he must have been feeling like, wow, this is really an organized process you got going on here. He doesn't know about any of these things. All he cared about is that the folks were there when he needed them. So that's pretty cool. But I do have a question beyond my observation. And now, I don't know when this all occurred. Maybe I missed that. But are you achieving EN payments because of what you're up to now with Brian?
I'm going to say that I have not seen EN payments yet, but Brian has only been with our EN for, I want to say 3 months now. And sometimes we're way behind with Social Security. So we will be, because he is at level 2, we should be getting milestone and outcome payments with him, but not yet, Brian.
Got it. Okay. Well, that makes sense. If he's only been with you a few months, I mean, that's way too early to expect that to occur.
Yeah, we've been together with Brian for about a year now, but we went through the process of getting a variance with the state and getting him employed, and then he's just had his 6-month review. So he closed after 90 days with Vanessa, and I guess it's been a little bit more than 3 months now. So I want to say it's been probably 4 or 5 he's been with our EN, but we haven't got any payments yet from him.
Right. Okay. I still actually am not concerned about that for you. I think it's pretty typical.
Me neither.
It's pretty typical that we have to wait around maybe 6 to 9 months before those wages are caught by Social Security to get through the automated process. So that
right.
seems actually on track for what is normal in our world, right?
Yeah.
You know, one other thought that I have while Miranda's seeing if there's any other folks with questions is I have to imagine, maybe this is a comment/question, I have to imagine it was helpful in engaging the VR system to have people on staff that had certification and understanding Social Security work incentives, benefits, et cetera. Would you say that that was a part of the process that helped?
I feel that I, as a VR counselor, know just enough to be dangerous with Social Security and benefits. So the fact that there is a CWIC here in the Job Center is super duper helpful. Because otherwise we're paying for it, and that's, you know, in Juneau for a face-to-face you're paying about $1,000. I mean, that's a lot, and especially if they're just starting out. And I've had a couple people who I've referred down to Wendy where they're just kind of, I'm not, you know, this is kind of what I'm thinking, you know, what would that do to my benefits? And it kind of helps to have them start out with a clear picture of what it might look like.
So Vanessa, is it fair to say then, because, you know, you have this option available to you through the workforce system, that, you know, you're definitely going to be more inclined to send folks that way. Plus, there's the option to then have that handoff that keeps things fairly seamless after case closure. Is that kind of, I don't want to,
definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that was a shameless plug for our other sites, Vanessa, to tell them that if you don't have somebody certified, you can see the value of this in so many different ways. Obviously, it's important for the folks we serve, but it's also extremely important for the relationships you can build. Why? Because you're a wanted person when you have that knowledge.
Kevin, can I just, I'll plug it as well. I can just say that it gives you a deeper understanding of what is going on with them when they're scared or when they just don't know when to take that extra step. By having that understanding, you can calm fears and you can have a rational discussion with a lot of your individuals, and you can really see who is who's appropriate to move forward with ticket and who just needs advice to walk out into the world and be comfortable in their own skin. So it really is, being a CWIC is really, it's extremely helpful.
Well, Wendy, thank you, because, you know, I've been beating that drum for a while, but it's nice to have some reinforcements once in a while. I remember many encounters with VR where I was assisting them with cases in various stages of development. The last thing I want to comment on from your presentation that really struck me was your retention rate. And I guess you could say that there seemed to be an increased retention rate as a result of solid partnerships, IRTs, with your important partner, vocational rehabilitation in this case, but probably with others too. It's not just VR, but I'm sure there was others, as you said, that came to the table. But I mean, I really picked up on that. I don't know if others did, if you want to make any comment on that.
I don't think it's an increased retention rate, but I think that it is it's consistent, and it's one that in looking at the data, the ones that we've gained through Partnership Plus have really stayed with us very consistently, and I think it's because they've had that support prior to us. We've made the connection before closure, and then we've kept the support, and I think that's where it leads, and that's why we kept them so much longer, and we've retained them. And then in January, one of the things, like I said before, that we're going to start asking our DRCs is whether they are partner, or whether they are IRTs, because I want to see if they're getting IRTs from other entities other than DVR, and seeing if that number increases or is consistent with the same as the Partnership Plus. So that's another data point that we're going to look at.
Well, we may have to invite you again then, because this is all very interesting to us. So I'm just going to wrap up a couple of things here. We kind of had our Q&A. If folks wanted to see this, we put this in here because we're proud of our ticket ambassadors and the work that they've done. You can also find this when you go to the Workforce GPS site. For each of our ambassadors, we put this sort of, it's kind of like a baseball card with their stats, if you will, and it kind of gives you an idea of areas of expertise, what they've accomplished. I mean, if you look at the milestone to outcome ratio that's being achieved there in Alaska, that's really impressive. So, you know, these are the folks that you want to speak to if you have any questions. And even if you're doing good, a good job in your own EN, it's, I remember from my EN days in workforce that, you know, you really want to talk to your peers and get back best practices from others. We don't have it all figured out. So this is just an example of Wendy's, but you'll find everybody's there. The last thing I wanted to share with you before I turn it back to Miranda is our plans for 2017 for the COP. There will not be a COP in January, and that's for good reason. We have every intention to meet with our ticket ambassadors in January to discuss our schedule of events for the year and to kind of carve out our topics for the year and so forth. We will also be establishing, you know, maybe even a different format. So we're really going to work closely with our ambassadors in the new year to maybe frame these calls a little differently. As always, as I put here, your participation, which we had today, is necessary for this to really be an effective peer-to-peer learning opportunity, and we appreciate the folks that stepped up today to talk about what they're up to. we really want to hear from each of you and learn from what you're up to. As we close now, Miranda's going to talk you through this survey, but it'll just pop up at the end of your, when you close out today. There will be a survey. If you could help us, I know sometimes we want to just walk away, but if you could really help us to fill this out, this will guide us in next year's planning for our COP calls in 2017. We've asked some questions, and if you could give us some comments, that will be extremely helpful to us. Last thing I'll say is I really appreciate your attendance today. We had a great audience. We had great questions. We had great speakers, Wendy and Vanessa. Thank you so much for your time and effort putting this together and sharing with your peers. Fantastic story. I was really, really impressed with what you did with Brian. And with that, I'll wish you all happy holidays and turn it to Miranda to close us out.
Well, ditto everything Kevin just said. Thank you, everyone. And yes, please do fill out the survey. And thank you again, presenters and everyone who participated today. We're really starting to have some great, robust conversations on these communities of practice. And this is what we want, forums where you all are talking and sharing with each other, and we as TA are just helping to facilitate that and weigh in and, quite frankly, learn from all the great work that all of you are doing so that we can transmit and help you translate that information to the national level and just keep generating this excitement because these are exciting things that are taking place. So thank you so much, and please fill out the survey and have a great day. There's also the PowerPoint. If you want to transfer that onto your computer, I'm going to leave the desktop open for another 2 or 3 minutes so folks can download that. If you don't happen to be able to do that for any reason, you can certainly reach out to myself or Kevin and we can get that information to you. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.